Zeke Foster was elbow-deep in a vat of ghost pepper mash when the alien students arrived. He didn't notice them at first. The industrial kitchen of the Interplanetary Cultural Exchange Dormitory was filled with the usual cacophony. Hissing steam, clattering pots, and the occasional human curse word when someone underestimated the Scoville levels. Zeke, as the on-site human culinary advisor, was used to the chaos. What he wasn't used to was silence. "Zeke Foster," said a voice behind him, "too even to be human." He turned, squinting past the haze of capsaicin. 3 alien students stood in a neat line, each holding a datapad and wearing that universal expression of interstellar curiosity mixed with fear, the one that said they'd studied humans but still weren't sure we weren't just walking biochemical hazards. The tallest one stepped forward. He had translucent skin that shimmered faintly with internal light, like a jellyfish learning to walk. "I am called Terwin. We have observed your species' dietary habits. We require clarification." Zeke wiped his hands on a towel and raised an eyebrow. "All right. Shoot." "Why?" Terwin asked, tilting his head. "Do humans ingest substances that cause pain?" Zeke grinned. "Ah, so you found the hot sauce cabinet." The shorter alien, a pale blue being named Loxil, blinked rapidly. "We consumed it." A sample marked Carolina Reaper extract. There was distress. "You drank it?" Zeke asked, alarmed. "Straight." "Yes, we believed it to be a flavor enhancer." Zeke leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "That stuff isn't food. It's a dare in a bottle." Terwin's light pulsed green, which Zeke had learned meant confusion. "Yet humans consume it willingly, in large quantities." He nodded. "Yeah, some of us do. It's kind of a thrill. You ever go skydiving?" "No." "Well, imagine your mouth is jumping out of a plane on fire, and your brain's trying to catch it with a parachute made of milk. That's spicy food." Loxil looked horrified. "But it hurts." "Sure. Pain's part of the experience. It's not just about flavor, it's about challenge. Endorphins kick in. You feel invincible afterward. Sometimes." The third alien, a quiet orange-skinned being named Fen, stepped forward. "We request to understand this phenomenon fully, through experience." Zeke blinked. "You want to try spicy food? Again?" "Yes," Terwin said. "Under supervision. We wish to understand how humans derive enjoyment from this." Zeke scratched his chin. "All right, but we're easing you in. No extract. We'll start with something mild." The following day, Zeke prepared a tasting session. He laid out a progression: jalapeno poppers, buffalo wings, Thai chili noodles, and a mild habanero salsa. No tricks, no hidden ghost peppers. He wanted them to understand, not suffer. The aliens arrived promptly. Each wore a custom-fitted apron. Loxil had a notepad and a small medical scanner. "All right," Zeke said, gesturing to the spread. "We're starting with jalapenos. These are mild. Just a little kick." Terwin picked up a popper delicately and bit into it. He chewed, swallowed. "I feel warmth. Slight irritation. But tolerable." "Good sign," Zeke said. Loxil went next. He paused mid-chew. "There is tingling. My nasal ducts are reacting. You're probably gonna sniffle a bit. That's normal." Fen tried one, then nodded slowly. "Interesting. There is discomfort, but it is not entirely unpleasant." "Exactly," Zeke said. "Now wings." They progressed slowly. The buffalo wings made Loxil hiccup uncontrollably, and Terwin's internal glow turned an alarming shade of red. Fen seemed oddly composed, though his hands trembled slightly. By the time they reached the habanero salsa, Zeke was impressed. "You're all doing better than I expected," he said. Terwin's voice was strained. "I believe I understand now. The pain is navigable. It requires focus. Endurance." Loxil coughed. "I feel altered." Is this the high you spoke of? Kind of. Could also be dehydration. Drink water. Fen looked thoughtful. I wish to try the extract again. Under guidance. Zeke hesitated. That stuff's dangerous. You barely made it past habanero. I must understand, Fen insisted. Zeke sighed. Fine. But one drop. On a cracker. And you'll have milk, ice cream, and a med team on standby. He retrieved the tiny bottle marked Reaper Extract, do not touch without gloves. He dabbed a single drop onto a saltine. Fen picked it up. For knowledge. Then he ate it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Fen's eyes widened. He made a choking sound and crashed to the floor. Medical! Zeke shouted. 2 human medics rushed in. One checked Fen's vitals, the other administered a cooling agent. Fen's body trembled. Internal combustion. Cannot. Process. Get him to the infirmary, Zeke ordered. Hours later, Zeke sat beside Fen's bed in the station infirmary. The alien's skin had dulled from orange to a pale tan. He was breathing through a humidifier. You all right? I am recovering, Fen rasped. Zeke leaned forward. That was reckless. I warned you. I wished to understand. I did not anticipate this level of reaction. Zeke shook his head. Capsaicin isn't just a flavor. It tricks your body into thinking it's burning. Your species probably doesn't have the same receptors. Fen blinked slowly. I regret my decision. Zeke chuckled. Yeah, most people do. But now you get it, right? It's not about love of pain. It's about pushing limits. Some humans like feeling like they beat something. Fen was silent for a moment. I believe I understand. But I will never consume such a substance again. That's fair. When Terwin and Loxel visited later, they were more subdued. We have reconsidered our desire to pursue further spicy food experiences, Terwin said. Loxel added, we have great respect for your species' gastrointestinal fortitude. Zeke smirked. It's not just about guts. It's about daring each other to do something stupid and then pretending it was delicious. Fen mumbled it was not delicious. Zeke laughed. You're not wrong. Over the next few weeks, the aliens recovered. Fen's digestive system took longer to stabilize, and a few of his internal sensors had to be recalibrated. The incident was noted in the intercultural hazards log under voluntary ingestion of human capsaicin concentrates. By the end of the semester, the alien students gave a presentation titled Pain as Recreation, a case study in human culinary practices. It was surprisingly nuanced. Zeke sat in the back, watching with folded arms. Humans, Terwin said during the closing statement, do not seek pain for its own sake. They seek mastery over it. Spicy food is not a meal. It is a ritual of resilience. Loxel nodded. And a warning. Do not emulate without preparation. Fen raised his hand. And never trust the bottle labeled Reaper. The room laughed. Zeke clapped slowly. Now you're getting it. The next incident didn't happen in the kitchen or the infirmary. It happened in the shared residential wing at 4 in the morning, Earth Standard Time, when Zeke Foster was awoken by the shrill, metallic shrieking of the emergency ventilation override. He stumbled out of bed barefoot, pulling on his work jacket as he jogged down the corridor. The overhead lights were pulsing amber, which usually meant chemical contamination or a minor reactor issue. Based on past experience, he was betting on the former. He reached the source of the alarm near the communal study lounge, where a pair of exhausted security officers were already arguing with a group of alien students clustered outside the sealed door. A chemical filtration drone buzzed overhead, spraying a fine mist over the walls. What happened? Zeke asked, still rubbing sleep out of one eye. One of the officers, a red-eyed woman named Morales, pointed at the door. Your students decided to run an unsupervised experiment. Something with vapors. We had a cascade failure in the CO superscript 2 scrubber, and the air quality dipped below safe thresholds. Zeke turned to the students. Terwin and Loxel were there. Along with a few others he didn't recognize. One had long sensory tendrils twitching anxiously. The other had a ring of eyes that blinked in sequence like a warning light. Zeke looked at Terwin. Please don't tell me this is about spicy food again. Terwin's outer layer flickered with faint embarrassment. We were attempting to replicate the olfactory impact of your culinary materials. Specifically, the aromatic compounds emitted during combustion of capsaicinoids. Zeke blinked. You tried to vaporize chili oil? We aerosolized a solution derived from dried but jolokia fragments and introduced it into a controlled environment, Loxel said. We wished to study the impact on human olfactory nerves without ingestion. Zeke looked at the sealed room. You hotboxed pepper spray. We consulted available literature, Terwin added. There are references to chili challenges involving inhalation. We took precautions. Zeke pinched the bridge of his nose. You really didn't. The door hissed open as the ventilation system finally stabilized. A wave of chemical sting hit Zeke in the face, and he coughed twice before stepping inside. The room was a mess, tables overturned, datapads scattered, and a small portable burner still smoldering in the center. A shallow dish of red liquid steamed slightly. Did anyone breathe this in directly? He asked over his shoulder. The ring-eyed alien raised a hand. I was nearest the burner. My optical membranes are non-functional. The others experienced respiratory distress. Zeke turned to Morales. Get med to check everyone. Exposure like this can cause pulmonary edema. We're lucky the fire suppression didn't kick in and flood this place with foam. Already called it in, Morales replied. They're on their way. 2 hours later, Zeke sat in the observation gallery outside the infirmary's isolation wing, watching through a transparent panel as the affected students lay in recovery beds. The ring-eyed one introduced earlier as Dalian was fitted with a humidified oxygen mask. A nurse was gently flushing his eyes with a saline solution. Dr. Kwan, the station's lead xenomedic, tapped her tablet and looked over at Zeke. They're stable. No permanent damage. But the mucosal inflammation is intense. Dalian species doesn't have tear ducts. They rely on evaporative cooling through their corneal ridges. They took the worst of it. Zeke nodded slowly. They thought they were being scientific. Kwan raised an eyebrow. So did early chemists who blew themselves up with sugar dust. Curiosity's lethal without context. The door opened behind them and Fen stepped in, walking slowly and wearing a medical support collar around his neck. His skin had regained most of its usual color, though he moved carefully like someone still recovering from a bad memory. I was not involved in the incident, he said quietly. Zeke motioned to a chair. Didn't think you were. Fen sat down with a wince. Word spreads quickly. Some have begun treating me as an authority on human pain rituals. Zeke gave a tired laugh. You're the face of the Reaper incident. That's gonna stick. Fen looked through the glass. They underestimated the volatility of human culinary emissions. We assumed ingestion was the primary hazard. I now believe your species has weaponized flavor in multiple vectors. Kwan looked between them. He's not wrong. Zeke leaned forward. All right, this has gone far enough. We need to set some boundaries. No more unsupervised experiments. If someone wants to know why humans do something dangerous, they come to me first. No exceptions. Fen nodded. Agreed. Kwan added, and I'll be issuing a formal advisory to the academic council. This station isn't a proving ground for dare-based anthropology. Later that day, Zeke gathered the alien students in the lecture hall, not to scold but to redirect. He stood at the front with a series of sealed containers on the table behind him. We're going to do something different, he said. Instead of trying to simulate human experiences with unpredictable outcomes, we're going to analyze them under controlled conditions. This is not a dare. This is science. Terwin raised a hand. Will there be ingestion involved? Nope. Today, we're going to study the chemical structure of flavor molecules. You're going to learn what makes something taste hot, bitter, sweet, or metallic, and why different species perceive those things differently. He picked up a small vial and held it up. This is cinnamaldehyde. Smells like cinnamon to you and me. But to some of your kind, it activates the same receptors as ozone. That's why your air filters reject it. Loxel took notes rapidly. I was unaware flavor compounds could mimic environmental hazards. Now you're starting to get it, Zeke said. Our bodies evolved to recognize certain molecules as threats. Capsaicin mimics heat. Menthol mimics cold. Some people enjoy those illusions. Others avoid them entirely. There's no universal logic to it, just biology and culture wrestling for dominance. For the next 90 minutes, they worked through samples. No one ate anything. Instead, they used scent domes, molecular analyzers, and cross-species receptor maps to explore how one being's comfort food could be another's chemical attack. When the session ended, the students lingered. Fen approached the table, looking at the sealed vials. Have you always understood why your species indulges in extremes? Zeke shook his head. Not really. I just grew up around it. You know what my uncle gave me for my 7th birthday? A jar of jalapenos and a dare to eat 3 without blinking. Fen blinked slowly. You did it. Nope. I cried. But I tried. And he laughed and handed me ice cream. It was more about the story than the food. Fen looked thoughtful. Story over substance. Sometimes. But sometimes it's both. Later that week, Teruin approached Zeke with a proposal. We wish to design a controlled cultural simulation, he said. A human-style dining experience curated with safety protocols to better understand the emotional context of shared meals. Zeke raised an eyebrow. You want to host a dinner? Yes. With human assistance. No extracts. No vapors. Only symbolic participation. We will document reactions, not provoke them. Zeke considered it. All right, but I'm bringing the fire extinguisher. The event was held 3 days later. The aliens prepared dishes based on human recipes but substituted their own ingredients, no real heat. Just visual cues. Red sauces colored with beetroot. Fake smoke made from vaporized tea. A dish that looked like it might burn your face off but tasted like spiced apples. The humans who attended were impressed. The aliens watched them intently, recording every reaction. Teruin leaned in at one point. This is what we lacked before. The social bond. The shared expectation. Zeke nodded. Food's not just chemistry. It's theater. We like the drama. As the evening wound down, Fen stood by the window, holding a small plate of something purple and sweet. He turned as Zeke joined him. I believe I finally understand, Fen said. It was never about the spice alone. It was about choosing to face something that feels larger than you. Zeke looked out at the stars beyond the glass. Yeah, humanity's been staring down the void for a long time. Sometimes we scream into it. Sometimes we eat it. Fen took a bite and smiled faintly. This I can digest. It was 4 days after the simulated dinner when Zeke found himself summoned to the Cultural Harmonization Boardroom, a place that sounded a lot more diplomatic than it actually was. The room was small, always a few degrees too cold, and smelled faintly of ozone and printer toner. He was already halfway through a lukewarm protein bar when he stepped inside and caught sight of the only other occupant, a long, eel-like alien coiled neatly on the central chair. Its iridescent skin twitching with what Zeke had come to recognize as bureaucratic agitation. Ah! Zeke Foster, the creature intoned, its translator lagging slightly. We must discuss the increasing incidents involving your culinary program. Zeke dropped into the chair across from it and unwrapped the rest of his bar. That's flattering. I didn't realize I had a program. You have a pattern, it corrected. One that has resulted in 4 medical interventions, 2 ventilation shutdowns, and a notable spike in interspecies gastrointestinal anomalies. He wiped his fingers on his pants. No one was forced to try anything. They asked. I supervised eventually. The alien's tail coiled tighter. Intent is not the issue. The board is concerned with outcomes. You've introduced stimuli that many cultures find destabilizing. Zeke leaned back. Are you talking about food or fear? There was a pause before it replied. Both, but primarily the former. He sighed. Look, I get it. You're nervous. But they're not children. They're students. You think humans never got burned doing science? We invented fire by accident. That is precisely the concern. Zeke stood. All right, then let them present their findings. Let them show what they've learned. If it's just chaos, I'll shut it down myself. The alien blinked slowly. You propose a symposium? I propose a story, Zeke said, told in their words. Let them explain why they kept going back to the flame. The eel-like being gave a slow nod. You have 72 hours. When Zeke returned to the dormitory, the lounge was quiet. Most of the students had gone to their pods or study chambers, but Fen sat alone at the table, carefully folding a sheet of biopolymer into a three-dimensional graph. You're going to present, Zeke said, dropping a stack of data slates beside him. Fen glanced up. To the board. They want to know if this was a mistake. You're going to convince them it wasn't. Fen considered the graph. They will expect metrics. Give them narrative. Metrics are just numbers with good posture. Later that evening, Terwin and Loxil joined them. Terwin carried a bundle of annotated sensor logs, while Loxil brought what looked like an electrochemical model of a human tongue, crafted from translucent gel. We've isolated the sequence of receptor interactions, Loxil said, unwrapping the model. It's chaotic, but not incomprehensible. Zeke nodded. You've got 72 hours. Make them feel what you felt. Not just the pain, the curiosity. The next day, the lounge transformed into a clunky fusion of laboratory and gallery space. A series of interactive exhibits began to take shape, each one designed not to impress, but to explain. There were no flashy theatrics, just honest deconstruction. One booth replicated the thermal mapping of a human face during chili ingestion. Another played recordings of laughter and coughing from the first tasting session, synced with spikes in heart rate and neural activity. By the second day, more students joined in. Dalian, now fully recovered, constructed a display comparing human and alien saliva enzymes, showing how different species broke down spice compounds. A pair of insectoid twins from the Glavari cluster built a rotating sculpture that illustrated the chemical volatility of capsaicinoids using color-shifting resin. Fen stood at the center of it all, adjusting lighting angles and recalibrating audio cues. His movements were slower than before, but deliberate. Not just recovered, transformed. On the final day, the Cultural Harmonization Board arrived. 7 members, each from a different species, each with their own sensory tolerances and cultural filters. They moved cautiously through the exhibits, skeptical but curious. Zeke stayed at the back, arms folded, watching as the students took turns guiding the visitors. This model shows how subjective pain thresholds are, Loxil explained, gesturing at a panel of blinking indicators. What is unbearable for one species is invigorating for another. Terwin stood near the neural feedback simulator. We discovered that the anticipation of discomfort activated the same reward centers as successful problem solving. It is not masochism. It is challenge-seeking. Dalian, his voice raspier than before, addressed the room from beneath a hanging molecular map. I did not enjoy the experience, but I gained understanding, and so I value it. Then Fen stepped to the center, holding the final piece. A small, sealed cube containing a single dried chili pepper, suspended in a neutral gel. He didn't speak right away. He just let them look. This is not a threat, he said. It is an invitation to explore the edge of comfort, to fail safely. Humans do not pursue pain. They pursue control over it. And sometimes they laugh at it. The eel-like board member from before uncoiled slightly. Why persist in such behavior when the cost is distress? Fen tilted his head. Because distress is temporary. But insight can be permanent. The room fell quiet. Zeke watched as the board conferred near the exit. There were no heated arguments, no dramatic gestures. Just a few exchanged glances, a few quiet nods. When they left, they said only we will not intervene. That night, the lounge returned to something like normal. The exhibits were packed away. The chili pepper was sealed in the archives under cross-cultural catalysts. Zeke sat on the couch, boots kicked off, watching Fen make tea with a practiced focus. You never turned it into a joke, Zeke said. Fen poured carefully. It was never a joke. Zeke took the cup. But it could have been. It still might be, Fen said. In time. They drank in silence for a few minutes. Do you regret it? Zeke asked. Fen shook his head. I regret the pain, but not the lesson. Zeke smiled. That's basically our whole species in a sentence. The door opened and Teruin stepped in, holding a small container. I have acquired a human delicacy, he announced. It is labeled wasabi peas. Zeke groaned. You never learn. We learn. We simply recalibrate. Fen took a single pea from the container and examined it. It's green. That seems benign. Zeke leaned back. That's what makes it dangerous. And when the coughing started 10 seconds later, no one panicked. They just passed the tea.